All right, sounds good. Good morning, everybody. This is Emily Decar. I'm the Ag Coordinator for the Upper Susquehanna Coalition. I want to welcome everybody to Watershed Wednesday this week. The Watershed Wednesdays is taking the place of what would have been our 5th annual Upper Susquehanna Watershed Forum. Unfortunately, we had to go virtual this year, but things have been going pretty well. We've been doing, this is our 5th session, so we're planning to do sessions through the whole month of August. This week's session is focused on the good, the bad, and the ugly of cover crops with using a Highboy Interseeder. Our speaker today is Kevin Brown, who's also known by some as the Highboy Cowboy. Kevin is an ag technician with Bradford County Conservation District in Pennsylvania. So I will let him get started. Feel free to type any questions in the chat box as everybody is currently on mute. There'll be time at the end for discussion and answering questions and all that type of stuff. So without further ado, Kevin, I'll let you take it.
Okay, thank you. You just had to throw that in, didn't you? So I owe you one now. Okay, I've been instructed I have 15 minutes to talk, so I'm going to fly through this fairly quickly. Luckily, pictures are worth 1,000 words, and most of these slides are going to be pictures on what we've seen. And then if this is being recorded, so if you missed something, you want to catch a slide that I blew through, you should be able to go back and look at that at a later date. The reason we got the Highboy really quickly is we use as much of the growing season in the Northeast as we possibly can. And so a lot of times it doesn't allow us to have enough time to get a cover crop established. So with this, we've tried a couple different timing scenarios of when we go in to plant crops, plant cover crops, right in the standing cash crop that's already there. And so what we're trying to do is just get a little bit more time for that cover crop to grow before winter gets here. So this is my presentation. We started 2 years ago, and so I'll go through 2018 first and then go to 2019. In 2018, we did a bunch of acreage in New York State, and we started in early August and we finished early September. And the pictures you'll see were taken mid-October, so 2 months later. So this is our Highboy that we use to do things with. That boom goes up and down. It's 90 feet wide. It's a 36 row unit. And we've been through corn that has been at least 11 to 12 foot tall without any issues whatsoever. And so here's a quick video of us going through. It's 12 feet, I believe it is, to the top of the cab. So this is probably between 9 and 10 feet. And as he goes around the corner, you'll see even behind him that the corn just pops right back up again. And we essentially leave very little to no damage once we get done with that. The next slide coming up, we'll be going through a soybean field. Obviously, soybean, we found out that if you have a soybean field that's yielding more than 50 or 60 bushel the acre, at the time when we want to put this on, there's absolutely no way that you can tell where the rows are. So with this, you just kind of drive and you're running some of the beans down, and that's just what it is. So factors affecting the 2018 crop, just really quick. The biggest thing is that our average rainfall is around 37 inches. In some places we had over 60. We had floods. The other thing that you don't get when we get that much rain is we don't get any sunshine. And so I think that is an underrated part of this whole thing, is that sunshine seems to be the thing that affects us as much as anything. And so because we had that much rain and we had no sunshine, we had some issues in 2018. The other thing that happened really quickly was we were probably good on our timing as to when we put the cover crop on. But if you remember the fall of 2018, it got so wet that people couldn't get anything harvested on time. So instead of it being under canopy for 2 to 3 weeks at the very end of the season, some of the stuff was under canopy for a month, month and a half. I think there's some that was even under canopy for 2 months. And so it really struggled again to get enough sunlight to get good growth. So the good, we had about 25% good. We had 25% that didn't do much of anything, and we had 50% kind of in the middle. Here is the good pictures. This is kind of what you want. It's a really good radish. We've got really good growth onto it. Things are working well there. This is a decent establishment. The reason I threw this picture in is because we've been told that this really struggles under really high yielding corn. And this was probably some of the best yielding corn that we had in the county. And we still got at least this much of an establishment, and in the same field, we got even a better establishment. So my only point here is that it can be done, or at least we've been able to do that. Here's the field once the corn has been taken off. You know, we all know that when we look at pictures, we may not see exactly what we're looking at in real life. You can see that there's a pretty good green tinge to it. I would submit to you that the amount of cover that's growing there is probably double what you actually see, just again because the pictures really don't capture a lot of it. This was late winter, early spring in that same field. They did go on to actually harvest this as beef feed, as a silage, and so it did come on pretty good later on. This is probably an average field. I threw it in the good just to remind me that if you look in the upper right-hand corner, right in here, there's a field that was harvested as grain corn. And this field, for whatever reason, it was going a different direction, did extremely well as the first picture that I showed you. So again, this is more of an average, but it's to remind me that, you know, there was a field right there that looked really good. This is probably our best field that we had that year. Two quick things in this: you can see tracks in it. We found out that year was wet enough that although typically when you drive through it, it does not kill it. In 2018, it was wet enough that everywhere the harvesting equipment went, it did kill it out. The other thing to note right here, and this is the real reason for trying to use this Highboy equipment, is that so this is a 120-foot strip, and we have a 90-foot boom. So we missed this edge right here on the left-hand side. So the farmer himself, after harvesting, went in with a no-till drill, which is typically what everybody else would do without a Highboy. And he no-till drilled both sides of this in post-harvest. So you can see what it looks like where we were able to go with a Highboy. This is another picture of it, same field, looking really good. And this is where he went with a no-till drill at the same time. So this is the reason to try to get those cover crops in a little bit earlier and give them that head start, because there was not much here at all. And radishes that are growing here, winter kill. So it wouldn't even been worth your time to put a radish in this mix. Again, annual ryegrass established pretty well in grain corn. This is pretty late. You can see the corn's getting pretty dry. This field, although here doesn't look all that great, you can see where we've rutted it up. And that took a lot of it out. But this is the same field just over the knoll, and we've got a relatively decent establishment, again, for as wet as that is. And I will remind you that in 2018, in Bradford County anyway, we were probably the only ones that got any cover crop in at all. So as you compare these, you know, these might not look all that good, but the neighbors, there wasn't anything on the land because they just couldn't even get in the field to get it on. So it was even worse yet. Again, just another good picture of some annual ryegrass coming on pretty well. In the same field, we had this. So, you know, there was, I can explain that a little bit later, but there was a few places where it didn't come in quite as good, but for the most part, it came in really, really well. We had a good establishment. This is a field out in Tioga County, Pennsylvania. Again, had a really, really good stand. You can see the radish there. If you look close, you can see some vetch and some cereal rye. We had a good enough establishment here that post-harvest, they grazed this a couple times during the winter. Again, just so that you can see the different varieties of vetch and radish and everything in there. This is a place where the corn was down for whatever reason, and we got another good take there. The average, we'll just kind of fly through real quick. We didn't get, what I consider is we had the establishment there and it was wanting to do something, but between rain and no sun, it was struggling. And again, we didn't crop off really early, so we couldn't help it out in any way before winter. So we had a lot of this kind of crop where it was looking pretty good, but it just needed a lot of help from Mother Nature. One thing that we really would like to stress, at least in the hills of the territory that we're in is soybeans. People love planting soybeans for one reason, because it really mellows the ground, and so it's really nice to plant corn in that the next year. The thing that mellow ground also does is it does this. And this was actually a set of strips that come down this hill where there was cover crop in a cornfield, and then there was a soybean without, and then a cover crop with a cornfield and soybean without. And every place, when it fell off the cover crop edge, it eroded it like that. And then when it went to the next strip and there was a cover crop, it deposited all the soil there, and it didn't erode any where the cover crop was. And the second it fell off into the next soybean field, it did that. So that is really what we would like to avoid as much as anything, like planting cover crops. Again, this picture was taken almost November 1st. You can still see the corn is actually green. So this cover crop was established, but that's been under canopy for a full 2 months at least. So it's just struggling to get some sunlight. Really quickly, I can explain a lot of this, but it so happened that because we were lack of sunshine for the year, we actually found fields that were planted north and south that actually grew, but every field that failed, I think except for one, had an east-west planting. And again, I can explain that later. I'm not telling you have to plant your corn fields north and south, obviously, but it was such a bad year that actually did make a difference. Manure application. This is one reason we plant cover crops, to apply manure to them so that the cover crop can suck up nutrients and hold them till the following year and then release them when we plant corn. When I went to see this, I thought, oh my God, we planted cover crop and we got it established, but we pretty much fried everything that was there through the manure, and that's really what we want to be doing, so this is not going to work. The next spring, however, again, you can see the tracks, but it came back really well, and we had some pretty good cover there. So nitrogen in the manure, we all know burns green stuff. It probably is going to burn it, but it's going to come right back the next year without any problem. We're going to skip this for time. Again, just another annual ryegrass in a corn strip. You can see the tracks that were left during harvesting. I should say the ruts. It was just an extremely wet year with no sunshine. Weeds. It does not like, cover crops this way do not like to compete with weeds. And this is burr cucumber, and nothing grows under burr cucumber. So that's what we got. This is the midwinter pick of the field I showed you before. So this is where the interseeder was on the right, and this is the no-till drill on the left. You know, huge, huge differences. This is the radish freezing out, winter killing, but you can still see a lot of green there, and it's done its job. We looked for other uses for the Highboy. We have done a bunch of new seedings, which has worked extremely well. Then we started deciding what else could we do? Should we be going in at other times? We decided that Penn State had been trying some corn at knee high, so we were going to do that. So this year, so this is why you want to do that. If you put them in at knee high, instead of getting the small amount of growth that we've been seeing in all the last few slides, this is potentially what you could get. This guy went in and spread his own at knee high, and he had some fantastic luck with that. So 2019 rolled around, and we decided that's what we're going to do. So here we are in the field, even a little younger than that, and we're applying 200 pounds of urea. We actually mixed the urea, the nitrogen side dress, and the seed together and applied them both at the same time. So this is our coverage. The one farmer, his field got ahead of us by quite a ways, and so this is actually shoulder high. And all the experts would tell you that there's no way this is going to work. It's too late. It's going to germinate, and then it's going to die before it comes out of canopy. We actually had such good luck with it that they grazed it for that following year. So this is under canopy midsummer. Again, under canopy midsummer. This is what it looked like when he took it off for corn silage. So the outside has been taken off for corn silage, and he's saving this for grain. But this is when he actually took the corn off. So we had a really, really good crop even before he took the cash crop off. I don't know if I can stop this or not. Looks like I did. Yep. Okay. So other thoughts or uses, again, top dressing nitrogen and cover crop at the same time. And then maybe even putting corn silage down and then putting manure right over top of it or disking it in. Some really interesting lessons really quick from 19 and 20. Ones you might not hear about in other places. They may be exaggerated a little bit here because we planted late. We didn't get going until September 17th, because if you remember the spring of 2019, it was extremely wet. Nobody got anything planted on time. So if we're going to only come in 2 to 3 weeks before they harvest the crop, that's going to put us really late too. So we went in really late. And that's the first thing I'd probably tell you not to do is to go in that late, but we did for that reason, and this is what we got. Really quickly, because I'm running out of time, cover crops do not like wet areas. We found that out. It does not like wet feet, at least everything that we've used. So if you have wet fields and it's in a really wet year, the success may not be all that great. This is a really interesting one I want to show you. If anybody has any idea what's going on here, I'd love to hear it. Again, due to time constraints, here is, if you can see my cursor, here is last year's corn field planted. This is a no-till field. You can see all kinds of rye growing in the row, right? And then the row next to it is actually 2018's corn crop. It's obviously a no-till field, but you can see rye growing really well within the row for even 2018. Yet the entire rest of the field is almost completely bare. I don't understand what's going on there. I've seen it in many, many places. Rye grows really well in the row from the last year and even the year before, but it grows nothing in other places. Love to hear any ideas on that one. The other thing we did was we broadcast the fields, and this guy actually went behind it and did a light disking and cultipacking of the field. And he had fantastic luck. They fertilized it, and again, they harvested this for beef feed as a silage, and it worked really well. This is the thing I can't stress enough. This on the right-hand side, this guy happened to apply biosolids. He got some biosolids this year, and he applied biosolids midwinter. And I think we've done such a good job in the Northeast of cutting back on the amount of fertilizer that we're using because of the Chesapeake Bay and because of all these other reasons, that we've gotten to the point where after you harvest the cash crop, there is nothing left for cover crops. And that's one of the reasons why I think we've really struggled to get cover crops to grow. This guy went in, and I'll be honest, he actually over-applied. He shouldn't have, but he did. The math was off or whatever. But this crop was so thick and heavy, it was going down. And it was just amazing to see the differences. So this is where it didn't get any, and this is where it did. Just absolutely amazing to see the difference. So we really need to be fertilizing some of our cover crops. This is where a flood came through. Luckily, it had a cover crop on this year, and you can see almost no erosion. It actually caught a little bit of the trash going through there. And so it can really help you in a flood event, try to keep that soil where it needs to be. The reason we plant cover crops, this is what you get if you till every year and you do not use cover crops. And this is right next to it where we actually tilled, but we had a cover crop growing, and we get some really nice root systems going and a lot of infiltration of water because of it. And that is it. That's a different story there. So I'm done. Whatever questions you have.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin. Well, in our chat, we have a question from Jim. How much does a Highboy cost, and can it be operated via GPS?
Yes, so good questions. Yes, the cost right now is, depends on the year, and we have some different grants, but right now it's $15 an acre, up to 100 acres, over 100 acres. It's we take $350. I think it's $350 off of that, so it's $11.50 for the Highboy, plus the cost of the seed. And right now we have a grant that pays for half the cost of the seed. So at current, it'd be $15 for the Highboy plus half the cost of the seed, and that's pointing us to the field and saying go do it. So you have nothing really invested in you're not running the Highboy, you're not doing anything except pointing it out to us. And so I argue with some people that I don't think they can get their own equipment out and do it for $15 an acre. So pretty reasonable. Drilling still, holds a little bit of an edge over broadcasting. We all know that because of soil to seed contact. So I don't want to say that this is something that you want to be doing everywhere, but that is the current cost, and we're trying to bring that down with some more grants.
Awesome. There was also a suggestion in the one question slide you had about what might be going on. The idea is perhaps additional organic matter from the stalks breaking down, excuse me, that might be the reason that the grasses are doing well in the previous rows. That was an idea. And then someone else just popped in for the actual purchase of a Highboy. It used to be around $71,000, but we're not sure what the current cost is. So those were more statements rather than questions. But
Okay. So cost of the
cost if you were to purchase a Highboy versus having you guys come out and do it.
Yeah. So let me go back to the GPS question too, because I skipped over that. So yes, we can run it by GPS. We haven't done that yet in standing corn, but we are supposed to have the ability to be able to download information from let's say your spraying or your planting by GPS. We are supposed to be able to download that into our system and run it that way. We have not done that yet. On the open fields, we have GPS and we have auto steer. So actually, between the two of them, especially if we can get your information from what you've done in the field, we could plug that in, and yeah, you wouldn't even have to steer the thing; it would do it itself. Our machine costs around $70,000. It was used, and when we initially started, they wanted a whole lot more for it than that. And I would tell you that I think a new one is like $400,000. So it really is going to depend on the unit that you find and what condition it's in and all that as to what the unit itself is actually going to cost.
And how far do you travel, Kevin, for your actual location of services?
So some of that's going to depend a little bit on acreage. I would tell you that if you think you're close enough that we might be able to do it, give us a call and we can talk about that. We had talked with Cayuga County this year. I'm not sure exactly where we stand on that yet, but if we had enough acres, and again, I'm not sure exactly how many that is, but obviously more than 20 or 30. But we've been as far west as the middle of Tioga County, Pennsylvania, and we've been up into New York State places, and we've been over to Lackawanna County. So we've traveled a couple hours in one direction to do some of these fields, as long as there's a reasonable amount to do once we get there.
Very good. Are there any other questions? Folks can pop them right into the chat, and we can make sure that we ask Kevin before we let him go. We have just a couple minutes left, so feel free to pop your questions in, or comments. That's fine too.
And while we're waiting, and just interrupt me if you get a question, but some questions that come up are also on what we're using. So the first year we listened to all the experts, and we did all kinds of crazy mixes with clovers and vetches and radishes, and a lot of it, again, because of the weather as much as anything, didn't work really well. So last year we kind of pulled our wings in and said, okay, we're going to use just cereal rye and annual ryegrass unless people want something themselves, that they've purchased themselves. And so we just went with those two things. So we've kind of been all over the board with some of this. And we do have a guy this year that planted early, the knee-high corn. Both of those guys that planted that way last year, we're going to plant that way this year. This year we went away from just the annual ryegrass, and we put clover in, hoping that the clover is actually going to supply a little bit of nitrogen to the corn crop, not only as it's growing this year, but after it's terminated next year. And so I think that's a really good idea, and I'm hoping that'll work.
Awesome. Well, it looks like we have answered folks' questions. So I am actually going to just share the upcoming schedule for our next Watershed Wednesday. And while I do that, Kevin, thank you so much for showing us some of these great projects you guys have been working on. Very exciting. And yes, if we were all in one room, we would clap very much for you. So thank you. Much appreciated. So coming up next week, we've got wetland restoration in the watershed. And then after that, road ditch management practices. And then we also have some prioritizing stream culvert projects. So we've got some interesting things coming up for the next couple of weeks. And feel free to share this information. And I'm so sorry. Hi, everybody. Amy from OCCA here. I've been talking through the whole time, but haven't actually told anybody who I am. But yes, please join us next week or the week after. And Emily, was there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think that was pretty much it. Just wanted to thank everybody for participating, and thanks to you, Amy, for hosting the webinars for us through the Otsego County Conservation Association, and thanks to Kevin for presenting. And then just a reminder that our next session is next Wednesday. So hopefully we get a good group next week.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Have a great day.